Are you interested in angels, demons, ghosts, spirits, and monsters? Are you curious about their origins, influence, and how to protect against the unknown? If so, then welcome to Southern Demonology, the podcast that explores all of this and more. Hello all, and welcome back to Season 5, Episode 7 of the Southern Demonology Podcast. As always, I am your friendly neighborhood ancient demonologist, JJ. This is the second and final part to the new series I'm calling Case Files, which actually goes through real-life demonic and paranormal events and told by those who actually participated or led those investigations. I highly recommend you to listen to the last episode before delving into this one, as it directly picks up with Deacon Josh, who led the second visitation to this cursed house and property. Before we do go there, I have just a few things to cover, and I promise to keep it short. First, to the good bit of news. I'm proud to say that on the day that this releases, which is July 22nd, that it is a very auspicious day, as it is my wife's and my wedding anniversary. Second, if you want to hear more about the Ethiopian Bible, then I just appeared as a guest on the Garden of Doom podcast, where I covered that in detail. The host is a great guy filled with different kinds of lore, and I highly recommend giving that one a listen. The link will be in the show notes. In fact, this coming up week, I appear yet again on the same podcast, Garden of Doom, discussing the pseudepigrapha. Now, on to the scary bit for today. This episode is littered with at least 4 EVPs, 3 of which sound just like a strange demonic pig sound. So here's an example. It's a short little clip of the conversation, and then pay attention at the very end instead of just saying it in order to get the topic out of the way.
Yeah.
Okay. And here is the bit that I am talking about, amplified. And again, I don't know what this is. And this same sound is repeated at least twice more. I've warned the bird songs of this, as I'm afraid that something, perhaps the very entity in question, is attempting to latch onto them. And the second part of this interview does get a little long. I'm not trying to prolong this, but I have to say one thing. And that brings me to the very last point. Being an exorcist or participating in one is dangerous. Not only do you face retaliation, but as I've said in the do's and don'ts of exorcism, exorcism comes with a price. It is an act of loving sacrifice on the part of the priest who performs it, and it will take something from you every time. Both of these men allude to it in this interview, but Father Birdsong's health has been under attack for some time now, to the point where there are many days where he can barely stand and is required for his safety to use a wheelchair. You know, I myself have suffered repercussions just from doing this podcast. And all I do is talk about the demonic. Father Birdsong has directly confronted the kingdom for more than 30 years, and the price he continues to pay is steep. And yet he does not stop. He continues the good fight and has even brought up the next generation, his own son, to step into his shoes. Even the Ethiopian Debtera priests who trap demons into magical scrolls to protect the faithful are said to die horrible, agonizing deaths. And they do look like they have seen hell in their final moments, with their faces contorted with grimaces of agony. Father Birdsong has spoken of being the watcher on the wall. Well, if you stand up there, you will get hit by the arrows that the enemy launches your way. And the only way to persevere is to grit your teeth and continue on, in spite of the blood pouring down your face and the pain lancing through your bones. And it does not stop. That pain is your constant companion. And if you have ever had the misfortune of suffering from a chronic illness where you have constant pain, I'm sorry. I know what that feels like. I was like that for 6 months with the condition a couple of years ago, and I will never forget that. And yet, that kind of pain is a very real possibility, if not worse. The exorcist does what he does for the faithful, for the community, and for his actual and extended family. He banishes the dark so that those suffering can see the light. He won't always win, and ultimately the battle will be lost. And yet the war continues. The bird songs continue their watch, and I am honored to bring you just one of their stories. I hope you'll forgive the exposition, but so rarely in life do we consider the consequences of our actions, how everything that we do can burn the candle brighter, and there's only a finite source of fuel to this life. The paranormal can be very exciting. It also comes with an entire, not even host, a legion of danger. And going into exorcism may be the greatest of them all. With all that said, let's continue with part 2.
All right. Yeah.
Files.
Why don't we launch into part 2? Because you're the one who led this segment of it, and I would love to get your thoughts, interpretations, etc.
All right. Well, the next session, it happened just a couple of days ago on the 10th. Dad was having a real bad day with his pain and couldn't hardly walk. He could barely stand up. He asked me if I felt comfortable and that if I thought that I could do it without him.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, yeah, I can do it. And so he handed the reins over to me. To tell you the truth, I knew I could do it, but at the same time, I was scared as hell.
Oh, I can't say to blame you, given the previous experience and plus just going into this by yourself. I mean, for how many years have you been doing assistant work with your father?
About 3-4 years.
Gotcha. All right. So you get there, and what happened?
Well,
Well-
hold on. I'm sorry. This is your show. I'm sorry, Josh. I think it's very important that you tell everyone what happened before you even went over there and how important it is that I blessed you. And you probably already was going to do that, but I'm sorry. And Dad, shut up now. I promise.
But yeah, we had gone to the church first, to grab some things because we had to grab the thurible, the holy water, everything that we needed for the Eucharist.
For those who may not be familiar with the term, can you just go over the thurible?
The thurible is the censer that's used for the church. It's a container that's attached to a chain that has a bowl in it that you would place charcoal and light it,
Mm-hmm.
and then place the incense on top of the charcoal to burn it.
Consecrated incense.
Yeah. And so we needed that, the holy water, the host, the wine for the Eucharist, which Dad consecrated the Eucharist and all for me. And then he blessed me. We went through confession, absolution, and I went through some other prayers of protection that comes from Father Ripperger's book, Deliverance Prayers for the Laity.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to the house. I got everything out, went inside, and I sat with the family first so we could talk and get an update on how things were going since our first visit.
And how were they going?
Well, she didn't hear the sound of someone running around in the attic anymore, which would happen every night. And the chairs weren't moving on their own anymore during the night.
I mean, that's something just right there. Do we know about what time these things were happening in the night, or did they specify?
She didn't really specify about the attic, but the chairs would always move approximately around 3:30 in the morning.
Wow. If that's not telling, then I don't know what is.
She also informed us of something else that was interesting that I thought, because the youngest granddaughter who's sensitive to these things, she grabbed one of the bottles of holy water that we had left and just poured the whole thing over the spare bed where the husband was sleeping, because she said it really needed it. There was bad things there.
Wow.
Out of the mouths of babes.
Yeah. And ever since then, the husband couldn't sleep in that room. And he couldn't sleep in the master bedroom because we had already blessed it before.
Well, I think that directly plays into what Father Mike was saying before, which was in part one, where there seems to have been an attachment to the husband directly, and that seems to indirectly confirm that.
Yep. And it's confirmed even more because the friend that was there was telling me, she informed me that the husband, when I was on my way, the husband went to the tree line and was just staring off into space. And then he started pacing in circles.
Oh, holy crap.
Just out of his head. And when I went to introduce myself to him, he wouldn't look at me in the eye, and he wouldn't shake my hand, and gave the excuse that his hands are greasy when his hands were spotless.
Oh, I mean, just the fact that there are episodes in which he does not seem to be in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and then doing that same kind of psychological hurdle that dogs that have been trapped in kennels for way too long, and they just endlessly circle and they can't break out of that.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, we are I would say we're well past the stage of.
I would say we're borderline possession.
Yeah, I was about to say, because I mean, after obsession, and then we move into the physical and the mental, which is oppression. For that to be able to be such a huge effect, yeah, we are absolutely getting into the possession aspect of things. That is just frightening.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I wasn't trying to interrupt you.
Oh, no. And once I got all that information, then I led them through the act of corporate confession. And then I gave the deacon's version of the
Absolution.
absolution.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went through Holy Eucharist, and we started beginning the exorcism. I took the Christ candle, which is the candle that we use every Christmas Mass and during Easter vigils as well. And it represents the light of Christ. And so I placed that in the center of the home, in the living room, on the coffee table, and lit it. And then I lit the incense and began the prayers.
Well,
Josh?
let me ask you this, if you don't mind, just real quick. What, beyond the symbolism and the occasions in which that particular candle is utilized, what else about its construction is different?
Well, it's a very large candle, but the candle is a pure white candle. It represents the purity of Christ and the light of Christ.
Okay.
The lampstands in the book of Revelation of the churches.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Josh, explain to them the purpose of incense.
Incense represents the prayers of the people and the saints ascending to the throne of God, which is described in the book of Revelation when the angel had the golden censer and the incense rose to the throne of God before he cast it down to the earth.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, please continue.
Right. And so we went through every room of the house. I went through every bedroom, bathroom, every closet, came back, circled all the way back around to the living room. And then I asked her where the door to the basement was. And she said, well, my husband doesn't want you to go down into the basement, and said that that was his place.
His. Who is his? That's the question. Yeah.
And which threw alarm bells off in my head. And so I was like, okay, so we took care of that spot up in the attic. So now it's trying to hide in the basement. And
Tell them what you did.
so I said, okay, we won't go into the basement. And she kind of read my mind and said, yeah, we won't go into the basement, and opened the door.
Oh, I love that.
So I threw the holy water down the staircase, blessed it. I took the censer and sensed it as well. Then I grabbed my vial of sacred chrism, and I went around and marked every entrance to the home, every doorway, blessed it, and so that no evil may enter the house, only things that are of God. And then we got to the attic, and I told them, I said, stay here in the living room. I said, pray in the spirit while I go up to the attic. And so I grabbed the holy water and the anointing oil, the sacred chrism, and went up into the attic. And once I got up there, I felt the wind get knocked out of me, like someone had punched me in the gut. And so I had to, yeah. I mean, I could feel it just getting punched in the gut, and the wind came out of me. And then I had to take a minute to compose myself, catch my breath, and then I started praying over myself because I was being attacked. And then once I finished, I began the rite of exorcism up in the attic. And as I was beginning, you could hear it sounded like the beams were cracking, like they were about to break. And once I reached the halfway point, when I said, God the Son commands you, I mean, God the Father commands you, God the Son commands you, God the Holy Spirit commands you, the room went black. It was like it was midnight again, just like the first visit.
Dang.
And of course, I'm nervous. It's my first time alone.
I wouldn't have been nervous. I would have been scared out of my wits.
That's the whole point. And I'm sorry for interrupting you, JJ, but I just got to say this. All these people that go to these deliverance ministry sessions for training, and they think they got all this authority, you know what I mean? And they say they have no fear. If you do not have any fear and enter into something like this, you got no business going into it. But anyway.
Well, you're either certifiably insane,
hello,
or something else. But yeah, that is not.
Or you're a pure saint of God.
Yeah,
which they absolutely nobody is. So yeah,
amen to that.
So,
except for me, maybe, because
but you and I are special though. We're different case.
There you go.
We're on another level.
I will see you both in confession.
You better sit down for quite a while.
Absolutely.
Once the room goes black, and like I'm nervous. I'm on my own. It's the first time without Dad there, and my voice starts to waver a bit. But then I'm like, no, I can't give in. So I started speaking louder and more forceful. And once I started doing that, then I could feel what I could only describe as the grace of God come over me. And then the room started getting brighter, and the light from the window that was behind me started shining brighter through. And then it was almost like it was daylight for a moment. Like I was outside, like the whole attic was lit up. There was not a shadow anywhere.
Wow.
And then I started walking through the attic, sprinkling the holy water around. I even grabbed the sacred chrism and I started anointing the beams of the attic as I was praying. And once I got through going through the rite, then I started reciting the rosary prayers, the Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory Be.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know, but during all that, below us is the living room. The dog, when I had began the rite of exorcism, the owner of the home told me the dog started pacing like it was agitated. And once I finished, the dog walked around in a circle one time, laid down, and went to sleep.
And that was before you ever came down.
And that was before I came down the steps.
Wow.
And so I get through in the attic and I come down the steps and I see the dog laying there. It's like, oh, well, I said, the dog's sleeping kind of peacefully. And then that's when she told me what had happened. She said that was the first time the dog has ever slept that peaceful in that room in the house.
Well,
that's amazing.
And her friend that attended the classes with us, she was saying that she could hear the angels singing, in which I can confirm because I felt that. And we sat there.
How did you feel? If you don't mind, I would love some elaboration on that one. How did you feel that?
I could feel the grace of God
mm-hmm.
descending into the attic.
Mm-hmm.
And I could smell that the scent of flowers. And I could also hear, well, I heard like little tiny bells.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so that
breaking the curses.
That to me was that sound.
That, have y'all ever heard that particular sound or experienced that type of fresh floral scent after performing this, or another location, or
one instance, and I'll have Josh share this just because of what you said, and I think it's so important, even to the point of death.
Yeah.
When my biological father passed away, I had been up well over 24 hours and then got news and went to Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah.
I was trying to get some sleep. And this was before I even found out that Dad had passed away. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I'm laying in the bed trying to, dadgum, I'm whooped, trying to sleep, and I hear this music.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what in the world? And Josh said the angels is singing. I said, I brushed it off.
Yeah.
I walked out into the hallway. I was about ready to tear somebody up,
He thought it was the restaurant next to the hotel.
I walked to the window. Dad, it's not that. The angels are singing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what am I hearing? He said, quote unquote, Papa just passed away.
Yep. I said, Pop's gone.
Finish the story.
And then as soon as those words left my mouth, we got a phone call from his Uncle George. And he said, your dad gone. He had a heart attack.
Oh my gosh.
But that shows you, although how hard, God, why am I so emotional today?
Well,
while that's so heart-wrenching, it's the providence of God, JJ.
Well, I certainly wasn't trying to make y'all discuss such deeply personal.
No, it's needed. No, it's needed, my man. See, that's why I love you so much. Is in even though I'm way behind on ending the curse, we don't mind discussing the hard things because they deserve to be discussed.
Right.
I'm sorry. Dad's gonna hug you once again. I hope.
No, it's fine. That's how that I could confirm what she was talking about. When she said that I could hear the angels singing, and she was sitting there crying because of that.
Wow.
And tears of joy. And the living room felt so much better. The air was lighter. You actually wanted to breathe in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And that heavy weight where it felt like you had 16 cinder blocks on your chest was gone. And
I think this is really important, and it's something that I've never personally discussed before. But when it comes to the interpreting of sounds, it's amazing the variety that people experience when that happens. Like I have personally experienced two clarion moments in my life, and to me, I interpreted that as my faith being refilled, and they were
Absolutely.
particularly low points, and it was almost like someone struck a bell inside of me. I didn't hear anything, but it was like light suddenly suffused my entire being.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's kind of the same thing and it's just experienced differently. The friend heard angels singing. You heard tiny bells. I experienced a clarion moment.
Yes.
It's fascinating to me, and I would love to see further studies being done upon this, and it would be really hard to do because it happens so infrequently. But yet, yeah, anyway, I didn't mean to get us off track. Go ahead, John.
Oh no, it's a fascinating thought,
and you've done intrigued me to start digging into it and do another show.
I would love to hear that.
Signs and symbols.
Yeah. And so at that moment we sat and we talked for a while, and
I'm kind of
it was so peaceful in that home after that point, JJ, that we had talked and 2 hours went by and I didn't even know it until I looked at the phone and saw that Dad was messaging me if everything was okay.
Oh my God. Well, let me ask you this. Two quick follow-up questions. Did you feel any, what's the right word that in order to describe that? Anonymity flowing forth from the basement?
Yes.
Okay. And was that still the case even after the incident in the attic was resolved?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually,
here's why.
We had as we were talking, I went ahead and scheduled another session within 2 weeks, and went home. And that night, I texted her. I said, "How's everything going tonight?" And she said that she had actually just left to take her husband to the doctor because he was vomiting uncontrollably when he came back into the home.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And stayed overnight. And she even said herself that she feels like it was more spiritual. And I said, yeah, from everything that y'all told me, I feel like he has an attachment. And it was probably the blessed incense that he was smelling that set him off and made him start vomiting.
Well, probably a combination of the incense and you blessing the doorways, I would imagine, would also have a really powerful effect.
Oh, yes. And she felt the same way about it. And she told her, and we told her that he needs to be willing to get rid of it. And if he wants to, we can do it. And supposedly she says that ready now that he wants to do it.
Well, they had a conversation. He said, okay, I'm ready to do this. Yeah.
Well, good.
So hopefully he's being sincere.
Instead of just saying it in order to get the topic out of the way.
Yeah.
Well, I pray that's the case because I don't know how many times, even if you're doing it over the doorway into the basement, if that's not, you're still leaving the enemy a foothold. So yeah, I can see how.
Which I actually told her, I said, next session, I said, well, he didn't even come inside for the session either. He stayed outside the whole time. And I told her, I said, if he does that again and sits outside for the next one, or if he's even there at all, I said, regardless, we'll We won't have to tell them, but we're going to go down to the basement
Good.
because of some things that had happened down there. And we need to bless it.
Inappropriately.
Yeah.
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 You know what, JJ?
And just to say, for the sake of discretion, we are not going to delve into the details of that.
No, absolutely not.
No,
Absolutely
we
not.
don't. We have invoked enough potential evil already without going into the more human side of things. So,
Well, you know what, JJ, it's very important that you said what you said, because even with me, if we were to indulge any information to any inkling that someone could figure out who we're talking about, I would be stripped of holy orders.
right. And the other thing too is just we are men of honor. And
Yes.
we never would take someone's privacy to be anything less than sacred.
Absolutely.
And I've repeated that over and over again. And I would never attempt to get y'all to divulge something that would do that. And even if something was inadvertently slipped through, which it never has, then I would edit the ever living heck out of it, or just not release it because it's not worth it.
You know what, JJ? Just as I'm going to call it a follow up question. And by no means would I ever want to put you on the spot, but during the description of everything, there was a common theme. Not only the holy water was being sprinkled, but the sacred chrism. And I know from your background, you understand what that means. There's a difference between the anointing of the infirmity or the oil of infirmity versus the sacred chrism. I want to address that in case just anybody ever has a question about it, but I want to hear your take on it too. When it comes to Josh took the sacred chrism, the key word there being sacred, right? And anointed the doorways. What happened in the book of Exodus before the Passover?
Yep, I know what you're getting at, but why don't you elucidate?
The anointing of the sacred chrism is what is used in the sacraments of the church for baptism, for confirmation, many times even during holy matrimony, which that is very powerful within itself. It is a whole another type and shadow of the bride and the bridegroom versus Christ, our bridegroom, and we the bride. But anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. Let me not go, JJ. I'm not going to be Alice on your show. We'll save that for the paranormal rundown. How about that?
That's fine by me.
But him anointing the panels of the door, so to speak, which was described in the book of Exodus. That was when they took the lamb that stayed with them and without blemish sacrificed the lamb and took the blood and applied it to the panels of the door so that the death plague would pass over them.
Yeah, the plague of the firstborn.
Absolutely.
Which, I mean, and I just wanted to point out for those that are not familiar, this is a very common theme that you find throughout the ancient Middle East.
Yes.
And Akkadian belief, you would have Lamashtu, who is a horrible demon that would go sniffing at doorways in order to find mothers who had just given birth or newborn children. And if so, then she would come in and ravage them and take them away. And they would use a small statue of Pazuzu, which, if you've ever heard Dr. Finkel give lectures on it, that's fascinating. He always supposed that they had a intimate connection at some point, those two figures, and he was kind of like the ex-husband that she couldn't stand, and she would always flee away, which always kind of tickled me with that mental image.
I always thought it was funny myself, but I'm sorry.
But I mean, and this is one of the most important rights
Yes.
that you can find is this act of protecting the home in some fashion. And you even find that within modern Ethiopia, where people were wear mothers would wear this protection scroll around their neck, which is meant to protect against all the great evils, but especially Shotalai, which are these race of baby killing demons that love to
Mhm.
spawn forth. So, anyway, go ahead, please.
Well, see, you just spurred a whole nother topic that we're going to have to talk about, the baby killing demons.
Yeah.
Do you remember in the Old Testament where the people were boiling the babies?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, God. See, I told you I was not going to go down a rabbit hole, and I'm going to blame it on you.
Well, I already had gone down a couple myself, so yeah,
But
you just followed my direction.
I love it though. That's just who we are. I wanted to, speaking of the sacred chrism and the incense and the importance of all that, some people may wonder, well, why is that important? Well, in the church, we have the sacraments, right? We have the 7 sacraments, but we also have what is called the sacramentums. And when it comes to things like incense and holy water and the sacred chrism and the oil of infirmity, those are called the sacramentums, which comes from the sacraments. Therefore, the the sacraments are for the, I'll call it the marriage of the bride to the bridegroom. How about that?
Yep.
And the sacramentums are created to strengthen that and to set apart.
Or to facilitate the sacraments themselves.
Absolutely. And I just thought that was very important to bring up. But also I want to hear, I don't mean to take over your show. I apologize.
No, you go right on ahead. I don't ever have a problem with you talking.
well, I just think it's very important not only for Josh to speak about, for you to speak about as well. And it really hit me as a point of knowledge that I think everyone needs to hear. Do you remember Josh said that he's been sitting under me for 3 years? Why? Why would it take 3 years? And I want Josh has been studying under me for 3 years. And I just want him to, you just recently joined our classes and you're going to be helping me on those.
Yep.
But I want Josh to explain why it's not okay to attend a weekend retreat and then all of a sudden think you're a deliverance minister. He chuckled when I said that, by the way.
Oh, I saw, and I don't blame him. I did too.
Well, because number one, you get your ass whooped.
Is JJ laughing? Yes.
Yeah.
Also, because it takes longer because you have to develop a discipline. Because if you go in there and, for lack of a better phrase, think you're Billy Badass, you're making the exorcism about you.
Exactly.
And that will turn you into a target because you're personally challenging the demon, and it will accept that challenge because it's stronger than you.
Oh, of course. I always think of it like this, and it's a really bad analogy, but when a person joins the military, that particular branch of service does not stick a gun in their hand immediately and say, okay, go have fun. It'll be great. You'll do fine. Right. No,
basic training.
They go through basic training. They go through all of the rudimentary knowledge transfer that they have to do in order to be able to act as a cohesive whole. And
JJ, hold on.
Yeah.
Here you go again.
Uh-oh.
You would not believe one of my recent sermons.
I was just about to say
basic training.
Back to basics is what he called it.
I'll send that to you. But anyway,
I would love that.
I just had to bring that up one more time because it's crazy to me. Are you in my mind somehow?
No, I am not.
Okay.
You don't want me in your mind. You'd be terrified, honestly. What in the heck is all this crap?
I might need to go exercise JJ. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
Probably agrees with that one. But no, but Josh, I completely agree with you. I mean, you have a crap load more field and practical experience than I would hope to have, and I'm not attempting to replicate that by any stretch of the imagination. And I mean, it's one of those facts where what you said is of utmost importance. It's not about you. And I
Absolutely.
think that's where a lot of paranormal investigators and these horribly named demonologists come off as. You know, it's the thrill of finding out the unknown. And they put that thirst for newness, for knowledge on the upfront, and they will directly engage with the enemy. And that's the last thing you do. You are a conduit for God. God is the only thing that can ever protect you. And if you open yourself and you step away from that grace and you expose yourself, then you might as well just be offering yourself up on a platter for all I'm concerned.
Yeah. And that's the thing with The Exorcist. The power doesn't come from him. It comes from the church and it comes from Christ. And the clergyman, we act in persona Christi, which is in the person of Christ. It's Christ through us.
Right.
It's not us. And that's what folks need to understand.
Here. Is a perfect way of saying that. Yeah, and that's why you never engage with the enemy. You don't ask it questions. And I think what you did in that particular case, where you felt yourself wavering and you knew that you could not do that, because that is the same thing as stepping away from the grace of God and saying, "Here I am, come on in."
Yeah. Yep. It would backfire, and then I could have become, I would have walked away with an attachment.
Right. Exactly. If not worse.
Yeah. You know, with that being said, I wonder, JJ, how many of the modern day quote unquote exorcists would stop and admit I'm weak.
A lot of
and then acknowledge, no, not about me, it's Christ in me. You know, the scriptures remind us that of this great mystery that St. Paul talked about that's been hidden from ages and generations. Christ in you, the hope of glory. When Paul cried out about his thorn in the flesh, and he was at the very beginning of that chapter speaking of the Apostle John that was caught up the Lord's day. But anyway, to make a long story short, he cried out to the Lord 3 times, Lord, take this away from me. Whatever this thorn was, who knows what it is. But Josh was experiencing a thorn. But that thorn at times is very important to remind you that it is not about you. And that's what I think we face a lot today with the modern day deliverance ministries. And I won't call any names this time like I did on the PRD, but you know who I'm talking about.
Well, I was going to have to say, I got to cut you off right there, because unless you're Bob Larson, who is an epitome of all things that one should strive to be, and that is complete sarcasm. Please do not emulate that man. Anyway.
Okay, you read my mind again.
I knew where you were going, and I don't mind calling that charlatan out.
But it's, you see, that's what it's got to come down to. And you said it best one time when you quoted Father Malachi Martin, that the exorcist loses a part of himself each time.
Yeah, and the thing that the priest that is in the prologue and the epilogue, I think it is more important than anything to picture not the man who started off at a younger age who was confronting this horrible presence in a small shack in a foreign country.
Right.
Rather, where he ended up, he was sequestered away in a monastery, and all he could do was play in the flowers, and sit on a bench and warm himself in the sun. But even then, he could not feel the joy of life,
Right.
nor the warmth of the light. And that is because he had given everything for his pursuit of others.
Yeah. And I think that's the reason why I wept so much in part one.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I wasn't trying to detract.
No. But I totally agree with you, because it really takes something out of you, and you got to have, just like Josh said, he's been in this for 3 years before he ever went out. Am I being a protective daddy? Well, you damn right I am. and excuse me, Father Mike just said damn. But but yes, of course. Because I'm not only his father, I'm his priest.
Right.
And it's my responsibility to take care of them. And that's like the classes that you and I and we're all doing. We're preparing people, whether are all of them called to be exorcists, will they all go do it? No, of course not. We are equipping the saints for the building of the kingdom. And in the building of the kingdom, sometimes you have to stand upon the wall. And that's what these are all about. And those that are called to do this, God have mercy on them. But I want to be able to train them correctly, because we are in a state now that where so much of the church doesn't even believe in hell or demons anymore.
Sadly.
And so, but yet we wonder why the demonic activity is on the rise.
And well, I'm also, if you remember, I'm feeling the vows I made when you, after my ordination, you instituted me into our church as
Yes.
a deacon. And one of the vows I accepted was an answer to a question was, will you be there for those in the church?
Yeah.
To look after them. And I said, I will, with God's help. And
I will with what?
with God's help.
Hello.
And so,
and that is not a light or casually given agreement. That is a true obligation.
Yes,
absolutely.
And so I was fulfilling that.
Well, I think Josh Sly told me where he can see us both.
Do I have to? No.
you know you got to see my ugly mug just one more time tonight.
Hey, if you can look at mine, I can look at y'all's whenever you want.
I just got to tell you that I have to go a week without talking to one of you guys really hurts me.
Oh, it does me too.
And
I feel more than a little bit lost, honestly.
I do too. And it's always, I mean, you're the guy that, I don't mean to brag on you, but I just got to. You're the guy that brought me into the fold. If you remember correctly, I told you with our first meeting, I told you flat out, I'm like, who in the hell is Josh listening to?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Well, and that's all thanks to Josh, because I mean, the fact that you convinced your father to actually come on and listen, and that means the world to me. Right
you guys will have fun.
Well, you know, we always make fun of it now, but you know, and please don't ever change the name. But when I heard Southern Demonology, I'm like, what the hell is that?
You will not be the first. Even though I love the name, I couldn't change it even if I wanted to.
No, do not.
It has, you know, I always say that there are lower bars of entry and higher bars of entry. That name has, even though it draws some attention in a positive way, and others it repulses. And I've had to defend or give preliminary explanations of we're not bad, we're not bad people, we're not satanic. This is about this. Ignore the name, and yeah, it's become kind of a standard spiel at this point.
well, for me personally, it spurred me to search it out, and I did. The name, I'm like, okay, well, maybe he's from the South. I can dig that. I'm a Southern boy. I'm a Chattahoochee River rat. And Josh said, no, Dad, he's on the upside.
Yeah.
I said, okay. And so I was just in the background, just as my stepfather would say, which is my dad, I was goggling you. He calls Google goggle. I was goggling you, and I said, okay. I said, and I listened to a couple of your episodes, and I'm like, clearly I'm not the smartest guy in the room after listening to the first few episodes. So that piqued my interest. And I'm like, I can learn something from this guy.
See, Josh, I fooled another one.
Yeah, well, that just goes to show you don't know everything. I don't.
I certainly don't.
And so I'm like, okay. And then all of a sudden, Josh says, it was one of our cases, wasn't it?
It was Fairhope.
Fairhope. Yeah, it was Fairhope. Josh said, JJ wants to have you on the show. I'm like, what? Yeah, I told him about our case in Fairhope.
Yeah, that was mine, JJ's first interview.
Yep.
I said, what if this guy that I don't even know has the confidence of bringing me on a show? I'm down with that. And it's been glorious ever since day one, in my opinion.
Yep.
I've loved it. Y'all have been on my show more than any other guest by a wide margin, and I would not have it any other way, honestly.
Absolutely. Well, the same goes here. And do you have any final thoughts or words?
Well, the last thing I wanted to ask you about before we close out is why. So beyond the attachment to the husband, which I can say fairly certainly that is absolutely the case. Why else, or would there be any other contributing factors to why you think that this particular entity's attachment to this place is so strong?
Generational curse.
Yeah, apparently when they were discussing the history of the home, every person that's there would develop some sort of serious issue with rage.
Ooh.
And it goes back years, which makes me believe, especially after seeing it materialize out of thin air, that this is something old, and it just feels old.
Do y'all know how old that house is by any chance?
I don't know, but that thing that hit me in the attic, that was one of the first things that it happened so quickly, and the pain was so intense. But I felt one thing: this is ancient. This is tied to the land.
Well, and it lingered too.
Yeah, and it.
Yeah, he had a headache
ancient.
for 3
I had a headache
days.
for 3 days, JJ. 3 days, almost to a migraine level. And it, oh God, I have only had 2 migraine headaches in my whole life. And I don't wish that on anyone.
Yeah.
But to have one for 3 days, I feel sorry for anyone that suffers these types of headaches, but it hurt. It hurt. And although the scratches were gone within a few hours, the feeling,
but still there,
the sensitivity on the surface of the skin, if you know what I'm talking about, the burning, it was there for 3 days.
How long did the smell last to y'all? Or did the floral scent kind of abolish it after y'all experienced it?
Well, after the first event, remember I told you that the air got lighter and I could smell like a fluorescent.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, this might tie into a whole 3-day theory. But for about 3 days, I could still smell that stench every now and then.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because if the pain would linger for that long, that makes me think that there would be another manifestation of it as well, such as that smell.
Well, and also to me, and please tell me what you think about it. The pain, the smell. I think there was one other thing we talked about, but anyway, it lasted for 3 days.
Yeah.
When it comes to Christ, what happened after 3 days?
Well, that and also the infernal loves to mimic the,
The Holy
the
Trinity.
righteousness. Exactly.
The past, yes,
It likes to mock the
absolutely.
Holy Trinity.
And so I think that is
To the point where they're called themselves the kingdom. So
exactly. So that brings up a whole another point in, you're gonna make me have to see. That's what I'm talking about. Even though we're writing curriculum, we don't know everything. I'm gonna have to dig into that and get some early church fathers and find out even more stuff.
no,
I like that, JJ. I like that.
I would love to hear the fruits of that research. I really would.
Any other follow-up questions that they could answer for anyone?
No, that's it. And if anyone does, please feel free to reach me at southerndemonology.com, hit the contact button, and or hit me up on Discord, and I can then forward these questions, if you have them, over to Father Birdsong and his son Deacon Josh, and we can get those questions answered if I don't know them, and I will probably still seek their opinion, even if I do, just so that you're not just hearing it from me. I like to have multiple sources to make sure that I'm right. But if y'all do have any questions, please reach out. I am accessible. They are accessible, and we can get whatever inquiries that you may have going.
Yeah, I want to add one thing.
Sure.
When JJ says that we are accessible, we mean it. We mean it. We've had so many reach out to us and say, well, we really didn't think you would call us back. No, if you got a problem, if you were suffering through something, don't try to do it alone. Reach out to it. We're here for you, and we mean that. So please, dear saints, don't go through turmoil alone. Even though you may even live in another state, we can still encourage you and help you. So reach out. There's no reason for anybody to go through something alone if you feel that you're being attacked from the infernal.
Amen. Because the infernals, their greatest tactic is to separate and isolate.
Absolutely.
And if the more alone they can make you feel, then you will have nothing but it to rely upon. And that's when it has you in its clutches.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate y'all sharing this. And I know we got very personal. I certainly wasn't trying to, but
No.
I understand how it's critical to everything that was going on. But the fact that y'all were willing to relive that and share that and educate people really means everything to me. Thank y'all so much for your time.
Absolutely.
All righty. Well, y'all know how to find me. I have already elaborated it. It's also in the conclusion to the show. Thank you all for listening. I cannot express how amazing I think all of this turned out to be. And that's why I was so desperate to get it on. And that's why I'm rushing it into right when you hear it. So this should be episode 6 of season 5 as a result. And I'm willing to work all weekend to get that done because I think this is a story that needs to be out there, not for viewership reasons, not because I'm hungry for internet points or anything like that, but because this may actually help people. And that's the business that we are in.
Absolutely.
Not to sell, anything else. And there will be And lastly, I will say that speaking of books, Father Mike does have some books that he has written. There are 5, if I'm not correct.
5 now. Yes.
Yep. You go to bookpatch.com, then they are there. They're available for purchase. They are cheap. And the reason is not to make money, but just to cover the cost of printing and to be able to get them out to other people. So please go check them out. I have all of them. They are wonderful additions, and I cannot recommend them enough. So if you're looking for a little spiritual guidance, then I honestly can't think of a better source for that. Anyway, thank you all for joining, and I hope y'all have a fantastic night.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Southern Demonology. Find us online at southerndemonology.com, which offers links to all of our social media and episodes. Southern Demonology is solely owned, produced, and edited by myself, and the intro and outro music are composed by me as well. If you have a moment, please rate, like, and share this podcast, as it is the best way to help support my work. As always, I am JJ, and it has been a pleasure to speak to you today.